Now on the first floor, if you remember, we decked the whole thing. Let the sheeting hang over a couple, three of the edges, and then came back, squared it up, snapped it out, trimmed it off. We're not going to be able to do that this way on the second floor for a couple of reasons. First is that I wanted to put this safety rail up as I went, so I couldn't have the sheeting hanging over the rim joist. Now I know this is probably, in fact certainly, not an approved railing. I know from a certain perspective it's almost a joke because, at least on a railing around a deck, a residential deck that people are living with, it has to be able to withstand a 200-pound point load at the top of the railing. In other words, you've got to be able to hit it or lean on it really hard, full body weight, and then some in order to verify that it's code compliant. I expect it's probably the same for safety railing around jobs. I don't even know, because in the last 25 years that I've been in Oregon, that personal protective gear has taken such a firm grip. I've never had to do this before, but I figured I needed to do it here because the rocks below would be really unforgiving. And so, even though this is not anything you would see perhaps anywhere else, it did the job for us. Sometimes when you're up in the air or on an edge like this, just seeing the railing can provide sort of a degree of safety because it catches your eye, it focuses your attention, it helps with spatial awareness, makes it easy to keep track of where the drop-off is. You know, a psychological barrier is better than no barrier at all. And the other reason I'm not worrying about cutting it all off perfectly at once is that at this point, the shape of the house is the shape of the house. I'm not going to make any big deviation between the first and second floors. The downstairs walls are plumb, they're straight, the rim joist is on straight, and I can trust it to define the exact size of the second floor.
I got it, yeah.
The decking goes down in exactly the same way as the first floor went down, glued and screwed with nickel-sized gaps on the butt joints and with minimal nails to hold it down in place until it's screwed in place. It's OSB also, which is less expensive and very strong. For all the details on these items, go back and watch episode 44 or tune into our podcasts where we talk about these things in depth. Now, in a lot of cases, it makes good sense and saves you money to sheath the walls while they're laying on the ground, before you stand them up, before the work is vertical. It's easier. You're throwing it down flat on the ground and you're nailing it bending over instead of climbing a ladder, and it reduces the amount of bracing that needs to be used to hold the wall where it goes. The reason I didn't do it that way on our first floor is because I wanted to use these 10-foot sheets. You can buy OSB 8 feet long, 9 feet long, or 10 feet long depending on your application, and sometimes it's a real labor saver. This way, since we have 9-foot studs in the downstairs, they reach up and lap over onto the rim board. And when that's nailed together, it is really going to tie the deck to the downstairs walls. When the sheeting goes on the upstairs walls, it will lap down onto the edge of the same rim board. And with the shear wall nailing schedule that's specified, it just makes a real bulletproof diaphragm, where even though we will be putting some Simpson straps to strap the upstairs walls to the downstairs walls, they really are optional because the OSB shear nailed all around the perimeter locks it up bulletproof. The other consideration was that if I would have used 8-foot sheets in the downstairs, I would have had to put a row of nailing blocks at the 8-foot, centered at the 8-foot level. If you put those in on edge, they have a tendency to blow up because the 1.5-inch width of the board, thickness of the board, doesn't like to have 2 separate rows of nails driven in on 4-inch centers. You can put them in flat, of course, but I don't really trust the nailing at the edges of the studs to hold a flat block in flush with the top. So in this case, the 10-foot sheets, in my judgment, were the way to go. All of the calculated shear strength in this wall is attributed to the wall portions in between the windows and the doors. When engineers are calculating shear strength in this way, ordinarily they do not even include in their calculations the sheeting that's below the windows or above the windows or below or above other openings. The openings are called perforations. And yes, a shear value can be calculated for a perforated diaphragm, but in most cases, the material in between the openings has to do all of the work. So we're using full sheets in these locations to maximize the strength and effectiveness of the sheets themselves. In other words, we want full-size, uncut sheets on these walls, in between the windows, in between the doors, in as many cases as we can, and especially in between the hold-downs that are locked into the foundation. There's a lot more on sheathing coming up, and we'll be talking about it a lot over the next several episodes. As luck would have it, the way our joist layout worked on this second floor gave us just a little complication with a plumbing drain line that has to happen upstairs. Now, I had done all of the homework that I thought I needed to do on this, and I had the toilet flange figured out to miss the joist. But what I didn't realize was that I was constrained by the size of the hole that could be cut in the I-joists to install the drain from the toilet flange down the exterior wall and into the crawl space. Now I'll show you this in a lot of detail once the plumbing is in and before we hang the drywall, so you can see the exact situation and how we sort of had to adjust these floor joists to accommodate where the plumbing just had to go. But the thing I want to point out is this. It's the floor decking that really locks all of these floor joists together. If we tried to do this adjustment after the decking was down, it would have taken a lot more time and would have involved removing some, actually probably quite a few pieces of that deck. So don't forget this. Water lines, electrical lines, and even HVAC ducts can usually be adjusted slightly as needed to conform to some site condition that maybe nobody saw coming, right? But like we said before, the plumbing drain lines are borderline non-negotiable and will almost always get the final word. And that's what happened here. So we're moving things around a bit, and you will get a good up-close look at it a little later on. The second floor deck on this house is a little more complicated than the ground floor, primarily because of the second set of stairs. We have to change the direction, the orientation of the joists and work our way around the opening in the floor for the second stairs, just like we did for the first set of stairs. So we've got two sets of stairs. We have a change in direction. We have plumbing. The plumbing is trickier to get through the second floor system than the ground floor system because of where the toilets hit. So all of this adds up to some special spans, some special bearing conditions. There's a small cantilever on the back side, which requires a particular reinforcement on the ends of these things. So there's quite a bit to it. I mean, relatively speaking, this is not a complex house, but it's not a simple house, and some of the complexity is showing up in the second floor system. It's really interesting, and you may have already discovered this, but there's a world of difference between looking at a set of plans out of interest and looking at a set of plans because they're the instruction manual you have to follow in the process that you are spending money to make happen. It's the difference between, I don't know, how would you say it? It's back to Aesop's fable and the rabbit and the hound, right? It's the difference between the reason the rabbit's running and the reason the hound is running. One's running for life and one's running for supper. When you're reading a set of plans, because you have to have the right information because of the work that's happening maybe as you're reading the plans, it's a fairly focused and intense process. It's a little nerve-wracking. You're usually not content with one place on the plans that answers your question. It's nice to have corroboration. It's nice to find a specific answer in a couple places if you can. And you're continually having to weigh, is this ambiguity something that needs a call to an engineer, or is this something where I am justified in using standard practice and pressing forward? So be ready for the change in the way you look at the set of plans between when you're sitting in your front room talking about, gee, should we do this, or look what someone else did, and when you're standing on the job with people standing around you waiting for a decision that only you can make off a set of plans that was formalized by someone else, and the answer is going to commit thousands of dollars to the outcome. It's a big difference. As we continue and work our way on through this floor system, we're going to hope that we don't overlook some detail in some obscure little table or reference someplace. We're going to try to find at least two verifications for each decision inside these set of plans for what we do on site. We're going to try not to improvise too much. We're going to try to make sure that we follow instructions in almost every case. If you would like to follow along with our set of plans as we work our way through this project, there's a link in the description that will take you to our website, and we're making these pages available for review by our supporters, whom, by the way, we appreciate so much. As we work our way through this project, you might be interested in working your way through a look at these plans. Thanks for watching our series. Thanks for leaving questions and comments below. Thanks for telling your friends. And please check out our podcast for further discussions on the issues and the details and the decisions on this house. And keep up the good work.